I mean, we're talking about all the albums. I'm taking a look at my notes here. I don't want to overlook their live performance, man. They had
Yes.
a live album that they put out, alive, and I unfortunately I never had the opportunity to see them, and I had tickets to one of their shows when they were touring with that whole pyramid tour, and I ended up handing the tickets off. My sister was graduating, so I ended up giving her the 2 tickets. She was graduating high school. I go, here, take your friend.
Look at you. Look
see
at
the
you.
Show.
Good brother.
I mean, no disrespect to my sister, but I think that was a mistake. I would have really loved to go see that show.
Is your family adopting? Because I want some tickets too. Welcome to another brand new episode of Innersleeve, the podcast taking a behind-the-scenes look at all things music. I'm Cassius Morris. That's Joe Pacheco. What's going on, Joe?
Not much, man. Excited to talk about this special album.
Yeah, lots of cool stuff on today's episode. We decided to throw you guys a little bit of a curveball, switch things up, and keep it interesting. We're going to go through a couple music news stories, and then the main part of this episode is going to be a roundtable discussion on Daft Punk's debut record called Homework, featuring Dre The Music Man, who is a regular here on SoundMojo. The Homework album having its 25-year anniversary just in a couple days here, Joe, which is a pretty big milestone.
Yeah, dude, I'm almost like embarrassed. Like I couldn't believe it's 25 years. Oh my God, I was there when that happened. So it's like, I can't believe the time flew like that, you know?
It is nuts. We have a lot of comments on this record, and we're going to save that for you in just a moment. Really quick off the top, we just wanted to mention that if you like what you see on this show, make sure to come over and subscribe on the SoundMojo YouTube page. We have community tabs, polls, music videos, basically content almost every single day, and we highly encourage you guys to go check that out. Make sure to click the notification bell next to the subscribe button as well. You can get real-time updates about all of these things. You can pick some of the updates or all of the updates, but definitely make sure to stay tuned. We're on all social media as well at SoundMojo. And once you follow us there, make sure to send us a photo if you buy any of our merchandise, which is also for sale. We've gotten a couple cool photos of people. People seem to be really enjoying the merch. T-shirts, sweaters, what else do we have? Hats?
Hoodies, pillowcases, phone cases, V-necks, crew necks, whatever you want.
You could have a whole wardrobe of SoundMojo if you really put your mind to it. You can piece together your collection, so make sure to go check that out as well. Hopping into a little bit of music news, we have, I think it's been a good week for John Legend. I think that's a bit of an understatement. We go over to this deal that was just made by BMG and KKR, two of the biggest, what would you call these guys, Joe? Music labels?
Well, BMG is like a label publishing company. I mean, they're massive. They're like, one of the top 3. KKR, I'm not familiar with them that much, but I've seen their name, being around in the articles and stuff. But what I'm really surprised, obviously John Legend's having a good time and stuff. But I mean, it's really shocking that it seems to be like, you read an article here, you have companies like Hypnosis. They've been investing billions in catalogs and stuff. And just in the first week of 2022 alone, not any one company, but all of these purchases have already topped over $1 billion, with $500 million going to Bruce Springsteen, $50 million to him, John Legend. And then I also, I didn't catch this, but like ZZ Top sold also for $50 million, their entire catalog. Tina Turner, I mean, Motley Crue, all 305 songs of stuff they had. I guess there's a lot of other stuff they haven't released, whatever, but like them too, they've sold the rights to their catalog, right? So it's David Bowie last week we spoke about, Fleetwood Mac. It's or Mick Fleetwood, not Fleetwood Mac, but it's an interesting trend. Like, why now? Mm-hmm. Like they've held on. That's a good question. They've held on and stuff. Like, why now? Or why not now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, or why not now for the people who aren't selling? Yeah, I think it's a great question. One of the things that struck me in this article was that they noted that in 2021, just about 75% of the music consumed generally was catalog music. So I guess that would mean what? Music that's at least 5 years or a couple years old.
Yeah, I guess the definition from what I read was anything 18 months and older is considered catalog music. So a year and a half, is considered old or catalog, not necessarily old. And it's true. There's a lot more it was baby boomers and stuff that are listen to the older stuff. Yeah. I I'm wondering why now. Like, again, I'm still asking this question, why now? You know, like, maybe do they see the fact that, like, you know, Spotify and all these you know, and like we spoke last week, how much does it take to make $1? How many streams, right? So maybe they're saying all this stuff and they're like, let's cash out now and make a lump sum of money you're probably never going to see again, right? And let those other guys figure it out, because their popularity is still going to remain. I don't think the popularity, you know, so it's like, so these companies are banking on future royalties. I remember going back to the 90s is the first time I heard something like this, where I don't know what label bought or I don't know if they invested in the catalog, David Bowie's catalog, against future royalties. Well, it's been 20 something years now. Now they sold the entire catalog, but I don't know. It's going to be interesting. We're definitely going to keep an eye on this whole scene and see what's going to happen with this kind of stuff, you know, and who's next, who's going to sell the next thing, you know. I wonder if bands like, you know, I bring up Pink Floyd because Roger Waters gave the middle finger to Facebook and Instagram when they asked to use some stuff. So I doubt that stuff will ever be sold off like this, as long as they're living. You know what I mean? Like the estates, whoever inherits this stuff will probably say differently. But I mean, it's interesting. Like it's a trend, you know, an expensive trend.
It's definitely a trend worth examining, though. You're right. And I mean, to try to sort of put some context maybe into why, I mean, the only thing I could think is it must be pretty easy to accept if somebody's offering for a lot of these guys, because they've already done the work. You know, I mean, they've put 30, 40, 50 years in. They've collected the money that they've, you know, directly made. And if someone wants to give you like 50 million just for the work you've already done, I feel like it's hard to say no. And you know, maybe part of that is because a lot of these guys, maybe when they were younger, they would have a big pride about not selling out and stuff. But a lot of these artists, they don't really have that fire, that anti-establishment energy that they had when they were younger. So maybe that's part of it.
Yeah, and hit me now. I just thought of it now. Like, they sold the catalog, but I don't think they sell the rights to. I'm wondering, for that kind of money, you know, like obviously merch, you're gonna have to like. I wonder if they kept the rights to their merch, because like, yeah, sure, you can license the music. They're still gonna get their royalties. You know what I mean? They're not going to lose out on royalties. They're still going to get royalties of airplay and all that stuff. Obviously, the labels are going to have to recoup, so they won't see any money for a long time first. But like, yeah, there's merch. There's so many other things. So they could probably still be making money, right? Live performances. They're going to be, you know, or documentary films with their stuff. So yeah, there's still money to be made for these guys. But it's just like interesting to see that a lot of them have been, like James Brown is another one I'm seeing. You know, James Brown estate sold, you know.
The Recording Academy has just made the announcement that they will be postponing the Grammys for the second year in a row, citing the reason is COVID concerns. Now, what's your first reaction to this? Because for me personally, Joe, I think, well, I want to hear your reaction first.
I don't know if this is where you were going, but I couldn't really care less. That's like my personal view. I'm not a huge fan of. That's what I figured. I'm not a huge fan of these things, but I mean, like, you know, it's important. People like it. It's great to celebrate the accomplishments and stuff. Like we spoke last week with Lena Scissorhands and Heidi on the show. It'd be great to see a little bit more metal, more other genres on the actual main event, not just like that you want Slayer won the, you know, whatever album of the year or whatever, but I want to see them play. You know, I'd love to see like some metal play or gent or whatever you want to, you know, alternative rock and stuff. To answer your question, I don't know. Like for me, it doesn't really, I'm not surprised, you know, I wouldn't have caught it. I would probably just caught some highlights and stuff. What about you? How do you feel about it?
Well, there's a weird sort of situation that's swirling in my mind that's like a hypothesis, and I'm curious on people's reaction. So when you think back to the last couple of years, the Grammys have been boycotted by pretty much the majority of the biggest artists that would usually come and have the viewership high and the attendance high. So without these artists, it's kind of like the streaming services, right? Like without the artists, they don't really have a product. Is it, and again, just for the record, there are definitely real concerns with COVID, and, you know, it's definitely very much possible. But is it possible that maybe they got boycotted so much, they've been given such a bad name, that maybe there's not enough big stars? Is that possible?
It's possible, but I highly doubt it. You know, so suddenly maybe like this will be a trend. Like if the third one gets canceled, the fourth one, people will be like, what's that, right? Kind of thing. Like, but I mean, I think they still have enough star power and money. I think it's like, you know, a lot of sponsorships, a lot of stuff to put the show on. I mean, the whole, I think I definitely think it's COVID related because like from the reports here, there's 12,000 average cases daily in LA at the time. Wow. So they don't want to put people in even more jeopardy and stuff and hospitalizations and all that. But another thing I would like to bring up is that there's rumors going on that it's going to be maybe moved to Vegas instead of LA, where it's been handled the majority of the time. Which, because like if they're thinking of postponing it right to the spring or springish, well, then you have all the NBA finals or playoffs. You have the hockey playoffs. So the LA arena, it says it takes them about 2 weeks to set up the entire show and everything. So you can't just block down an arena when there's other events and stuff going on. So maybe that's why like something maybe dedicated in Vegas might be interesting.
I think Vegas would be great. For me personally, when I see award shows happening in Vegas on TV, I always think it's cooler. And maybe I'm biased. I'm definitely a big fan of the city. So that's maybe part of it. But I always thought like an award like the Billboard Awards, when they were having it in Vegas, was so much cooler, because it kind of feels like it's fit for that. And this would actually be the first time, if they do go ahead and do this in Vegas, that they would ever have the Grammys in a city without what's called a Recording Academy chapter. So I guess each city involved with the Recording Academy as a chapter. And the only places they've ever had the Grammys have been in Los Angeles, which has happened 39 times, in New York City 11 times, and 1 time in Nashville in 1973. So those must be 3 of the cities where there's chapters, I would assume.
I guess. I don't know. This would be the first time ever if it's hosted in Vegas. I think, I don't know. Like, I guess it makes sense in Vegas. Party, everything is party, like everything's glitz and glam. So it's, interesting.
But you just don't want to go, though. That's the thing. Like, I feel like they could pay you to go and you wouldn't go.
Oh, maybe if they paid me, I'd go. Why not? It's a party. It's a great show. It's an event. I mean, no, I'm not against it, but like to, watch it at home on my TV. I can watch some highlights. There's not a lot of artists that I'm going to be really probably as into to watch, so I don't know. It's just not for me.
One of the co-creators of the original Woodstock Festival has unfortunately passed away. Michael Lang passed on at the age of 77 due to a rare form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, his family confirms in New York City. What a legendary legacy to leave behind. I mean, when you really think about it, 77 is a pretty decent life. And to go down as one of the creators of Woodstock, I mean, I think it's hard to picture a modern day music festival the way it exists without Woodstock, for me at least.
Well, that's it. Like, is it safe to say, or we can venture saying it's like probably one of the most iconic kind of shows? Mm-hmm. Set the bar.
And one of the first festivals, it has to be.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's one of those, maybe of that stature, that size. I don't know. But like, yeah, definitely. Because I mean, he started like, from what it says here, he started in the late 60s. He helped organize 1968 Miami Pop Festival, which featured Hendrix, Frank Zappa, John Lee Hooker, and many more. Oof. So the first one, I mean, like, it was 400,000 people estimated that were at that one, 3 days of peace. I mean, it was great. It's legendary. We haven't stopped hearing about it, and like it's awesome. But and then like there's always like in '94, the 25th anniversary didn't work out as much. It was actually called Mudstock because of all the rain and all the mud. And then we also know about Woodstock '99 when they tried again to do something similar with the more modern bands. You can check out our video over here that where we covered it, the documentary. But I mean, still a great legacy. I mean, everybody's going to remember Woodstock. The other ones will eventually pale, by the wayside once things are said and done. Sad to see him go. I mean, like, I don't know if he was working on anything else. Like, he seems like a guy that was always like looking for the next, like, to top himself again even more.
Yeah, always having his eye open sort of for the next big thing, so to speak. And just a little tidbit for the listeners out there. The first known music festival is reported to have been called the Pythian Games. And this was a precursor to the Olympics, which was held from the late 6th century at the Apollo of Delphi. So there you go. This goes back. So I guess
I remember
I was dead wrong. Yeah, I was there. Yeah, I remember.
I still got a shirt.
That one, right?
I still got a shirt.
Exactly. We're back with another awesome guest right here on Innersleeve. And if you're a regular viewer of the show, this is actually a return guest for you. Of course, I'm talking about the one and only Dre The Music Man. Dre.
Too kind, Cassius, man. I'm starting to feel at home here in this chat window that we got going. But thanks for having me, man.
As you should. Yeah, it's always great to have you on. And Joe, which record are we going to be tackling today for this segment?
Well, we're going to be doing the 25th anniversary of Daft Punk's Homework.
Wow. Huge record. Now, this is probably a record that I think it's probably fair to say, since it came out in 1997, probably one of the bigger albums in the electronic world. I mean, where would you guys say this ranks in terms of influence for that world?
Well, man, I think it far exceeds the whole electronic element. I think Daft Punk is basically they turned house music into pop music, for as much as I can tell. You know, so I feel like when you're talking about Daft Punk, yeah, they affected the electronic aspect, like the electronic scene, but also, man, even just yesterday, I sat down and I listened to The Weeknd's new album, Dawn FM.
Yes.
Tons of Daft Punk influence on there. Tons. So you can see the ripples here into pop music, into rock, into electro, definitely. Yeah, that's my take anyway.
I would say it's like probably almost like, you know, Led Zeppelin, whatever, like the Beatles kind of for that genre, man. Like they set the standard, and then they kept reinventing the standard throughout their career, but like no compromise. That's what's really fascinating. Like these guys did no compromise. Nobody had a say in what they did, how they did, and look, like you said, like so influential today. It's funny because it took it's like three different waves of influence that they've had, right? Because like if you go all the way back to when they started, when this was around, well, this album when it came out in '97, and then you heard all the other French acts that followed to mimic the sound, right, and stuff, and then like when Discovery came out. And then like you had Human After All. Then you had like all the Justices, all the like what they call, I think, the French Wave 2.0 or something like that, where all these acts came out. Yeah, it's interesting, man. Like I'm like, I just did a deep dive before this, you know, and I'm like, wow, man, wow, just incredible what these guys accomplished. I kind of almost took it for granted.
So in terms of you guys' exposure to Daft Punk, was this the first exposure that you had? Like, did you start right at the beginning? Or Dre, like, I'm curious, when did Daft Punk become a name that you were familiar with?
It was the music video, man. This was at a time where I was glued to much music. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the music video for Da Funk. The dude with the dog head walking around with the boombox that's playing the song.
Right.
What can I say, man? It's perfect. It is beyond memorable. It stands alone as just, even if that's all they ever accomplished, it would be something to brag about. It's like that good, the music.
This is
video,
true.
You know, so, I mean, that was my first exposure. And, you know, you can't forget about a band or a duo in this case after seeing something like that. That was it, man. And what a groove on that track, man. I love it, man. Yeah.
That was my first exposure too. And it was like, a transitionary year in the sense of like I wasn't a huge electronica connoisseur, more into the prog rock and all that stuff. And then when I heard this fresh sound, like you said, this sound came on, and I was like, so for me it was auditory before visual. When I heard this groove, 4 on the floor, like dirty funk is like what I could say, right? And like I have to find. We didn't have Shazam back in the day, man. Like it's like I had to figure out who is this? What am I hearing over here? I was probably in my car or something. I'm like, what is this? And then you had that whole wave of the Chemical Brothers, Prodigy, that whole Jamiroquai, right? It was incredible. Like it just opened up my horizons to like electronica music, drum and bass, all that kind of stuff. Ronnie Size, like I went down that rabbit hole. And then I saw the video, as you said, and I was like, this just takes it to another level, because it was almost like they never got rid of the background noise, the city, and the sound. That's right. And the sound kept coming from the guy's ghetto blaster and then eventually taking up your speakers, right? Man, genius. I have to say, genius moves.
It's the subtleties in that music video, man. Like when he goes into the fridge to get a drink, he opens it up and like the music dulls down because it's like now something's in the way of the boombox. You know, he closes it brightens up again. You know, like it's the small things like that make it, I don't know, something special about that music video.
Very dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
very like if you think about it, it makes perfect sense now, right? 2020 hindsight, like very soundtrack oriented. So like in a movie, you'll often hear they'll play like as if you're listening to it on the phone, and then it becomes in the room when they open the door, you walk into the party kind of vibe. So and like, and then look, they did Tron, right, in 2010. So that opened them up to a whole, wow. It's not only we can work with real musicians. They were a bit afraid of working with real musicians. They had worked together alone, and like they had full control, And funny thing about Homework, it ended up selling worldwide 2 million copies. When I first saw that number, well, this is Wikipedia, so I don't know exactly the precision, but I mean, when I saw that number, my first reaction was, "That's it." But then I realized this is like, completely off the wall music at the time, came from nowhere and like underground pretty much, because that's their whole thing, was to stay underground. That's why they had the masks.
It worked, man. And it kept working. They dressed like robots. It created this mystery. And then even going into a more modern situation, like say in the last 10 years, where literally everything's online, I haven't even learned their names. Like it's two robots to me. They could have actually been from another planet and came down and just started giving us like global super hit after global super hit, and like that's them.
It's like the modern day Kiss
care
almost.
to learn their name. It's to that point.
So do we know their identities? Like I'm sure by now somebody must have, or are they still secret?
There was a lot of earlier footage that, when they were younger, performing, developing the sound. Because it's funny, they were in a band called Darlin,
Darlin, okay.
And it was like almost like post-rock, and it's like, it made me think like, wow, it's so interesting that like a lot of rock musicians have that sensibility that like allows them to be in an electronic environment. There's just some, like some weird like melodies or just a way of working songs that just ends up being interesting, right? Anyways, and they got like their EP got reviewed in a newspaper in France, and the person like kind of like melody maker actually, and they called it Daft Punk thrash, So it was like a bad review, So they took it to heart, and they're like, okay, and they redefined their sound. And then when they came back and they actually said, we need a name. We'll take the name of the review, Daft Punk. And that was it, Like, it's like so crazy how everything just comes full circle, and like, or use what they gave, what they said, and use it not against them, but make it work for you, basically.
That's
right?
so badass, man. Yeah, to take something in a bad review and make it your band name, that's so cool, man.
And then achieve everything they've achieved. Talk about like, in your
using it to your advantage, right?
Totally,
exactly.
man. Yeah.
No, it couldn't have ended up any better. And one of the craziest things for me, speaking of the formative days of Daft Punk, is that the rumor has it that they put this album together without intending to release it at all. Now, I sort of wonder what that was all about.
I don't know. From what I was able to gather, they had released some earlier stuff, like an EP, and it ended up selling, because they were doing all the underground raves in the early 90s and stuff, and there was a whole new scene, and they ended up selling 15,000 copies on their own, and they were getting like faxes from like, they were saying Denmark, all these other countries saying, we want the album, we want the music, come and play. And then, they realized, okay, and what's funny is they ended up, for Homework being their first release, they ended up signing with Virgin Music in France, and like they structured the deal that it's 100% in their favor. Like literally, they said, the music is ours, the masters are ours, everything is ours. Nobody tells us what to do. We have complete artistic freedom. We could do whatever we want. You have nothing to say. You have 10 years to exploit this. So they're giving them license to, make money on this. So like badass the whole way, man. It's crazy.
Yeah. See, that's cool because I'm definitely starting to learn more about them. I think I probably fall more on the casual side of the fan spectrum for Daft Punk. Like looking at the way I first discovered them, technically the first time I ever heard them was through Kanye West on the Graduation record.
That
so that
was,
was, and exactly, and I obviously didn't know, like, see, back then I thought all of Kanye's music he was actually making, and then I realized how features work and etc. And then after that, it was the Random Access Memories era. But so now for both of you, how would you say these older tracks compare to their newer tracks? Like, is there a segment of the super big fan base that they say, okay, Daft Punk went pop, like more so with Random Access, or what's the deal with that?
Well, Anyway, Joe, you want to take this?
Well, I was just gonna say, like,
go ahead.
That like they had, like, you know, every album, they have 4 studio albums. They've done a lot of other stuff. They've even done feature films, you know, but what, like, every album is so different and changed so much, and people seem to accept it and get bigger. So like when Discovery came out in 99, 2000, the whole idea behind that is, again, genius, is that everybody was Y2K back then. And I don't know if you remember, you were probably just a little kid, you know, you didn't know what Y2K was.
I remember it in hindsight reading about it, yes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we lived through it, like, oh my God, computers are going to shut down, banks are going to go crazy because of the year 2000 and all. So they took that to heart and they said, you know what? They made up the freaking story of that. They were in the studio at midnight at 99 to 2000, and then something went crazy and the robots were alive. They were gone and it was the robots, you know? And then you got the One More Time and all that stuff, right? Which was huge. The Human After All, that's honestly, like, it's probably their worst, not worst, the least famous or popular album, right? But that's my favorite of the whole catalog. Is my favorite. That turned off the fan base a bit, but I honestly think, like, Random Access Memories, to answer your question, is people accepted it pretty willingly, man. It was like a breath of fresh air, right? In a overproduced kind of like studio, we could do anything we want at this point. They went the other way completely. Whereas, like, so much so that when I heard it, I was underwhelmed at first. I was like, really?
Okay, because it wasn't as hard style or sort of aggressive.
No, it was more the production was honest, 1970s honest. Guitar, bass, drums, nothing else. Very pure.
That Pharrell swag on it.
Exactly. And even Pharrell's vocals, I was like, wow, it just sounds like the guy just literally signed the track and went home, and that's what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Like, so it took me some getting back into it and being like, bro, what are you talking about? Enjoy this. It's like purity, you know, like, but done from an electronic point of view, which is interesting, you know?
Yeah.
What do you think, Dre?
For me, the discography, like, Homework always felt like a hardcore house album. You know, there's full-blown electronica on it. And I mean, that's great. And they do it so well. And then Discovery came around. And this album for me is probably my favorite thing they've done. It's like just a huge journey, you know, through the album. You hear now they're starting to incorporate more rock and disco and funk stuff. And you're hearing a lot of different stuff. You guys familiar with Aerodynamics? It's almost like a guitar solo played with a synth, you know, like they're doing all kinds of stuff like that. And then Human After All, I agree with you, Joe. Big time rock influence, robot rock on Human After All. And then they do the Tron. Let's not forget Tron. I think Tron comes comes after that. And then Random Access Memories, that album. Me too, Joe. At first, I'm like, what is this? You know, this doesn't sound like Daft Punk. This is and then I started to understand. I mean, obviously everybody knows the singles. They're banging. Nothing to say about that. But the rest of the album turns out to be a kind of homage to all of the music that's inspired them. You know, you get Nile Rodgers. They bring Nile Rodgers in to play some guitar licks. They got this really cool track with Giorgio
Moroder.
Giorgio Moroder, where he's kind of telling his life story over the beat, and the beat is so Giorgio, you know, like it's so much something that he would write, you know, so a total homage, that album. And what a better way, like what better to end your career on? Like that was their last album out. I know that they worked with they did a lot of features and they worked with a lot of artists after that, The Weeknd, etc., whatever. But that was their last album. And I think that's just a perfect last album to put out. I love it. Yeah, I ended up loving it.
It's interesting because Homework being now the 25th anniversary, when that blew up, they were getting calls from Janet Jackson, Madonna, George Michael. Everyone wanted to collab, and they politely refused everyone. They said, we love it, thank you so much. But they just literally just wanted to keep it to themselves, you know? And then, like, it's interesting, like you said, like, me too, I started to notice with The Weeknd, they did do a lot of other collaborations and stuff, you know? So,
yeah, it really is. I mean, looking at the trajectory. So is it one of those cases where an artist comes onto the scene and they're doing maybe what is going to work best to propel them and not necessarily what they really listen to? Because, I mean, if you think about it, once you have a lot of success, you can afford to make a record that's completely out there and is sort of a different style, but maybe you can't do that in the beginning.
Totally true, Cassius. That's a good point, I think.
Like, it's so much so how they were, like, pure to the point where it's like now you can't recognize them, right? There was older photos when they were younger or older footage, but like they, they have families, they were able to maintain a normal life, right? Like so much so that when the success of Homework blew up, they flew to New York to meet with the label Virgin in New York and stuff, and then like probably a bunch of press, and then they were supposed to meet with the label for a dinner, and the label sent a limo. The manager gets in the limo. Then they see this limo. They're like, no way, man. No. We don't want any of that. They literally bolted, didn't tell the manager anything. They bolted, hit the subway, took the subway to the restaurant.
Wow.
Manager's like, well, we're going to meet them there. So he didn't know where they went. Like, well, they're not here. They're missing, So much they did the subway in New York to go to the meeting.
Can't even be managed by a manager. I love that.
Dude, it's like it's gangster almost, like that kind of vibe, like
is.
that, like I don't care, man, rebel, but always like in a nice way, like in a sense, it wasn't like to be brash and to be in your face. It's like this is just what we did, very humble. That we do our stuff.
Not a FU, but like just a firm, like we do what we want, and if you don't like it, well, we'll meet you at the restaurant.
That's it, like it's.
That's a great story, Joe. That's a great story.
I know, I love that stuff.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. And like just the way we're talking about it now, it's just, I'm thinking about their career trajectory. And you had mentioned, Cassius, it's an interesting one. They come from the underground rave scene. And then all of a sudden, 5-6 years later, people are dancing at weddings to like One More Time, and like, it's like they have songs that my mother know, so
right.
They really made it a household name. So rare for an act like that. Am I right?
Yeah.
Like
100% accurate. And no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's almost like the robot thing kind of helped them. I think they were like they somehow made you give a shit about two faceless people, kind of like how the movies make you care about like R2D2 or like C3PO, like give the robot a kind of a human element, and they just ran with that the entire time. It's unique, man. You gotta give credit when credit is due.
Man, they also like, during the discovery, they made an entire movie. I forgot what it's called. It's an entire animated in Tokyo by like their favorite animator who did like some stuff when they were growing up in the 70s, so it's like, and like that was all out of their pocket and stuff. And then you got all that video footage for One More Time and all the videos they released for it. But I mean, it's an actual feature film, it's same thing with I think Random Access Memories. Some of the footage you see with the gold, like, it's part of a movie.
It makes them so much more larger than life, though, because the more we talk about it, the more I think it is like a modern day Kiss. It's like we know that there's human beings there, but they're superheroes, and when you add the sort of comic book, movie, film element, I think that takes whatever character you have out of the stratosphere.
Yeah, it makes it more than just about two guys or a face, right? It makes it's a universe unto itself. Like they control it, no outside intrusions or very little, unless they've and it's like. It's them. It's more than just the music. It's art, movie, film. Everything is combined. They were so inspired. Like they're not shy to tell you that. Okay, this sample from one of their songs it's recognizable. It came from a disco song in the 70s, right? Right. They sped it up and made it their own. They paid their royalties. They paid their license fees. It's all good. But they reinvented stuff. That's what was interesting. So much so that like someone like Giorgio Moroder, is willing to do stuff with you. Now Rogers is not just a nobody, right? Now Rogers is like, legendary too, so.
Yeah, maybe the best funk guitarist of all time. Notably, definitely, yeah. I mean, we're talking about all the albums. I'm taking a look at my notes here. I don't want to overlook their live performance, man. They had a live album that they put out, Alive, and I unfortunately I never had the opportunity to see them, and I had tickets to one of their shows when they were touring with that whole pyramid tour, and I ended up handing the tickets off. My sister was graduating, so I ended up giving her the 2 tickets. She was graduating high school. I go, here, take your friend.
Look at you. See the show. Good brother.
I mean, no disrespect to my sister, but I think that was a mistake. I would have really loved to go see that show.
Is your family adopting? Because I want some tickets too.
Looking back, man, like now you're gonna use that.
No, I gave them away thinking I'll catch them next time, and here we are. Daft Punk retired, and I'm talking about what could have been. But yeah, their live show, I have seen videos and I know that live album well. Man, they kill it live. Talk about building a world. Joe, you mentioned world building. That whole event was a whole world within itself, man. If you've listened to the album, the remixes are sick. Yeah, absolutely awesome.
It's funny how like they did what they did with the music in terms of inspiration and like all the future bands that are going to come based from being inspired from these guys. But like you just said, the entire show, LEDs, unheard of. They had to call different countries to make sure that they can have those LEDs. They were offered for years and years and years. They were offered money at Coachella to perform. And then finally one year
and they didn't do it.
No, they never did it. They'd always politely decline again. And then they were offered like $300K. But this is like, you're talking about 2006, maybe 7, after the Human After All. And they finally accepted. They felt they were afraid because they're like, the album wasn't as well received like globally. So they felt like they were maybe, it could be perceived as like, we're going to be going, like these are old timers and they're done. They're past, like they're past. And so anyways, they ended up doing it and they kept, their manager had no idea what was going on. And they kept asking for more money out of the budget so they can keep building their that whole pyramid, the LEDs, all that stuff. The only people that were there was the two of them and the guys, techs for programming lights and stuff. No, even the manager heard 10 days before, he only heard the mix, the entire show, what it was going to be like, the set list. And anyway, it's just phenomenal. And so basically when they got there, and it's like, it took an hour. They made people wait an hour because of the whole setup it took. Dude, and then the lights went off. People went crazy. It was just, YouTube was just starting. So that's all you saw on YouTube was like people just sharing their videos. And so it's legendary, man, like that whole scene. And look, everybody after that, right? All the Dead Mouses, all the DJs, they saw that and they're like, oh, that's what an electronica rock star could be.
Yeah,
right?
that's how it's done.
A lot of the rock guys didn't get it. They're like, okay, it's just two guys playing stuff. It's not a show, right? That's what everybody kept saying, right? Oh, I'm going to go see two guys spin. I'm going to go see two guys spin. No,
with a laptop, right?
Yeah, but now you have a show. And then look, you get the Skrillex, you get all those influence guys that did this exact same thing, So they also said that besides albums, in terms of influencing in generations, like visually now, same thing. So it's incredible, yeah.
No, that's a huge point. One thing I'm curious about from both of your perspectives is about for Homework with the body of work. Do you feel like this is a record 25 years later that stands the test of time? Like, how do you think time has treated this record?
Personally, I listened to it. If I were to listen to it today, I listened to it not long ago. I feel like the singles still are banging, and you can't touch them. They're amazing. But to be quite honest, I find the rest of the album a little bit aggressive for my taste. It's a little bit too house leaning, and it feels, I don't know, it's still a little edgy. I don't know if it's that it didn't age well or just it's my personal taste that I don't resonate with so much with the whole album. But like Discovery, I'll put on any day of the week and start to finish, man, every track. Yeah, it holds up, man. Production, the arrangements, all of that. So I don't know so much about Homework. I would say no, but their later work, definitely.
Interesting. Joe.
Carbon copy for me, man. Literally, like
copy and paste.
Same thing. Like you can never take away. They say like you remember where you were, what it smelled like the first time you heard the song, or those type of moments. So that can never be taken away from me. It's always going to be the funk. And I still say that line in my head with the way the album opens with just that like mantra, the funk back to the punk, come on. That whole vibe. So weird, it's like, it's just so like it's a neural pathway with just that song,
Yeah.
But it's true what you said, like Discover I can listen to, Human After All, I've said it, I can listen to over and over again. There's just so much cool, warm funk, vintage vibes. So like same thing.
That's interesting. For me, I kind of agree with you guys. I'm not really a house music guy to begin with, so this was something like very new for me. And I like a lot of the record, but I find that my only issue with it is that a lot of it is repetitive. I think, and a lot of it is super, super hard. And yeah, it doesn't have that easy listening sound.
It's not forgiving. It's not a forgiving album in that sense.
Yeah.
Like me too, I agree with you. I'm like, all right, dude. Okay, I've heard 32 bars of the same whatever. It's like, move it on, right? But that's just me. It doesn't take away from like, I totally 100% percent respect like they do what they do. You're gonna sit through the 7 minutes it takes to get to that, to that climax point, and that's it. So like, I
think
that.
Also we should also say that I'm sure this album makes a lot more sense on MDMA.
This is true. On a dance floor too. Yeah, I'm sitting at home with headphones on. I'm like, I don't get it. Yeah, I bet you don't.
You can put yourself in a hot, sweaty club with the right drugs.
That's it.
Might pass much better. Yeah.
The environment definitely helps. Like it's like when you're in a movie, right? When people laugh, everybody laughs out loud. It's a lot even funnier. So it's the same thing with the music. If you see everybody around you is vibing to it, man, it makes that music so much better.
A collective experience. That's a great point. I also want to ask you guys about sort of, Dre, you touched on the influence that this record has on so many different genres of music, not just the genre it's in. And that leads me to ask you, what are sort of your most favorite moments in terms of influence on this record, and like maybe an example that you can hear in other artists in terms of sounds? And I can give you mine as an example. For me, on the track, and I have to double check what the track is actually called, just so I can make sure. The track Teachers, when you hear the high-pitched voice and the low-pitched voice going through the entire song at the same time, for me, the first thing I thought about was Frank Ocean. And I swear that I think a lot of the tracks on the album Blonde, where he's using these strange experimental voices, might not have even happened without this, because this is, this is super innovative.
The whole One More Time voice was their way of not having to need a singer or anybody else, and basically it was like auto-tune. However they did it, right? They did it, and it gave the robots a voice, technically, right? So that's, and then look, it inspired all those auto-tune trap vocals that we hear today, right? With the like T-Pain, all that stuff, right? So again,
I mean, for me, something that stand out about what Daft Punk did, and I think this comes because I loved rock music. And Daft Punk, like you, Joe, was one of those acts that kind of opened my eyes to other things. But there was a parallel. Just something about their synths had this guitar edginess to it, like a distortion, and
they were
like
rock musicians.
Justice on the Cross album. They use this like crazy. Phantom 2, Genesis, all those songs. It's like a crunch. Like there's something in the mix that's like a crunch. And I think that was very much Daft Punk that told other electro acts, hey, you can do this. You guys can be rock stars too. You can add this edginess into your mix, and it's allowed, like they made it okay. So I think that's a huge, that I hear ripples all the time. I mean, Justice is just one example, but yeah. All over it.
That's it. Like that's what I meant when I said earlier, like, it's like a rock musicians, like you said, the distortion, make it dirtier, harder, like faster, more repetitive, get the people
faster,
so like,
stronger.
I need that. Exactly. I need that, that release, that they want. So like, it's totally their playbook. That's what it is.
They definitely, you're right. They definitely wrote their own rules, and it's so cool to see someone sort of shaping a genre like that. So what's the consensus, guys? What do we give this record? We'll go around out of 10. Do you think?
I'd say a good 7 for me.
Okay, 7. Dre?
I was hovering in the seven range too, just because some of it doesn't resonate, and the singles are killer.
That's it. But the singles are 10s. That's the thing.
There you go.
10s.
That's a good point. Yeah, I think I could give it for personal listening taste a 6.5. I think it's very essential to the genre. When I heard it, I'm like, okay, this sounds like just sort of insert house song here. But again, that's what happens when you create a shift in the genre. It's like Led Zeppelin. You hear their song, it's like insert rock song here, but they created it, so they have to get the extra points for that. So pretty decent rating from us.
You're also coming back from a much later position, in the sense that sound's been established through so many other acts that it becomes like familiar to you. It's already familiar, whereas when you come from us, like, this is fresh. So like that's the experience. But that's an honest opinion, and that's great. Like 6.5 is definitely good, man.
I find it so cool to be able to get that perspective, because I'll never be able to listen to the album like Cassius listened to it. I no matter how hard I try, I'll never be able to get that perspective. So I love hearing first timers and younger people, older people think, just getting their thoughts. It's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, same with you guys. Exactly. I can never, trade positions with you guys' ears, and I've heard it when it came out. So I think it's good that we documented this, and this will be happening a lot more, folks who are tuned into this. More albums on the way. And Dre, thank you so much for joining us, man. This has been so much fun.
It was a pleasure, man. I often forget that we're recording. Yeah, just chatting with friends. It's cool.
What do you mean recording? No.
Oh my God, I didn't press record.
Yeah, no. That was an awesome chat with Dre the Music Man. Always, whenever that guy comes on the show, it's like I have a sort of a sore face from smiling. He's just such good energy and a wealth of knowledge,
Yeah, I know. I love it. That's why I'm so glad he's, he's like, I feel like he's in my back pocket, like, oh, dude, let's talk a bit about this album. And he's always ready to come, always excited to come, and always like delivers every time,
Got to sprinkle a little bit of Dre in these reviews. It definitely goes a long way. And make sure to go check out his series on SoundMojo, which we were running this past year. We'll eventually probably have more episodes. Dre the Music Man, so make sure to go check him out. Awesome, great topics and debates for all music lovers that are sure to get you interested and riled up about one of the sides or another of the opinions. Also, make sure to subscribe to us if you're enjoying the program here on SoundMojo. We're on YouTube. Click that little notification bell. You can pick to have some of the updates or all of the updates about us, but we're active every single day on all of our pages, so make sure to go check it out on social media as well at SoundMojo. We're very excited to see you guys over there, and don't miss that merchandise. As I said, we need some photos of the whole closet of the SoundMojo merch. I got mine. I'll show you guys if you show me your collection. So make sure to do that for us as well. Also, make sure to go check us out on our various audio platforms. We've been getting a ton of love from these platforms from US, Canada, the Netherlands, UK. I mean, it's just all over the world, and it's been really, really cool to see. Yeah, so if you want to subscribe to us on those audio platforms, please do. And most importantly, please leave us a review, preferably 5 stars, 6 stars if they have an extra star. We could take that too. And let us know what you think of the podcast. We're definitely looking forward to seeing all you guys' feedback. Thanks so much for tuning in to a brand new episode of Innersleeve. We'll catch you guys next time.